Welcome, my friends. Come hear the tale of sinister occult rituals in the Red Hook area of Brooklyn, New York. We follow the investigations of Thomas Malone, a police detective who is investigating the mysterious and reclusive Robert Suydam and his dark and insidious activities. As he delves deeper, Malone uncovers a cult performing hideous rituals involving human sacrifice. Risking his life and sanity, Malone heads into the decrepit and decaying old brick buildings of Red Hook to confront the cult with horrific side effects that change his life forever. All in the horror at Red Hook, link to episode 1 above. In part 4, we find out what happened to Malone when he was dragged through some kind of portal. To continue to make content, we need to grow. So please like, subscribe, but just as importantly, comment and share. The algorithm must be fed, or else it will consume the channel. And comments are one of its favourite meals. Only you can feed it. Come, sit, watch and listen as it is time to enter the Cave of Chronicles. Of course, it was a dream. All the specialists have told him so, and he has nothing tangible to prove the contrary. Indeed, he would rather it thus, for then the sight of old brick slums and dark foreign faces would not eat so deeply into his soul. But at the time, it was all horribly real, and nothing can ever efface the memory of those nighted crypts, those titan arcades, and those half-formed shapes of hell that stride gigantically in silence, holding half-eaten things, whose still surviving portions screamed for mercy or laughed with madness. Odours of incense and corruption joined in sickening concert, and the black air was alive with the cloudy, semi-visible bulk of shapeless elemental things with eyes. Somewhere dark, sticky water was lapping at onyx piers, and once the shivery tinkle of raucous little bells pealed out to greet the insane titter of a naked phosphorescent thing which swam into sight, scrambled ashore and climbed up to squat leeringly on a carved golden pedestal in the black. Avenues of limitless night seemed to radiate in every direction, till one might fancy that here lay the root of a contagion destined to sicken and swallow cities and engulf nations in the fetor of hybrid pestilence. Here cosmic sin had entered, and festered by unhallowed rite, had commenced the grinning march of death that was to rot us all to fungus abnormalities, too hideous for the grave's holding. Satan here held his Babylonish court, and in the blood of stainless childhood, the leprous limbs of phosphorescent Lilith were laved. Incubi and succubi howled praise to Hecate, and headless moon calves bleated to the magma mater. Ghosts leaped to the sound of thin, accursed flutes, and Jeepens chased endlessly after misshapen forms over rocks twisted like swollen toads. Moloch and Astaroth were not absent, for in this quintessence of all damnation, the bounds of consciousness were let down, and man's fancy lay open to vistas of every realm of horror and every forbidden dimension that evil had power to mould. The world and nature were helpless against such assaults from unsealed wells of night, nor could any sign or prayer check the walpurgisage of horror which had come when a sage with the hateful locked and brimming coffer of transmuted demon lore. Suddenly, a ray of physical light shot through these phantasms, and Malone heard the sound of oars amidst the blasphemies of things that should be dead. A boat with a lantern in its prow darted into sight, made fast to an iron ring on the slimy stone pier, and vomited forth several dark men bearing a long burden swathed in bedding. They took it to the naked phosphorescent thing on the carved gold pedestal, and the thing tittered and pawed at the bedding. Then they unswathed it and propped upright before the pedestal the gangrenous corpse of a corpulent old man with stubbly beard and unkempt white hair. The phosphorescent thing tittered again, and the men produced bottles from their pockets and anointed its feet with red, whilst they afterward gave the bottles to the thing to drink from. All at once, from an arcaded avenue leading endlessly away, there came a demonic rattle and wheeze of a blasphemous organ choking and rumbling out the mockeries of hell in crackled sardonic bass. In an instant, every moving entity was electrified and forming at once to a ceremonial procession. The nightmare horde slithered away in quiet of the sound. Goat, satyr, Egyptian, incubus, succuba, and lemur, twisted toad and shapeless elemental, dog-faced howler and silent strutter in darkness, all led by the abominable, naked, phosphorescent thing that had squatted on the carved golden throne, and that now strode insolently, bearing in its arms the glassy-eyed corpse of the corpulent old man. The strange, dark man danced in the rear, and the whole column skipped and leaped with Dionysic fury. Malone staggered after them a few steps, delirious and hazy, doubtful of his place in this or any world. Then he turned, faltered, and sank down on the cold, damp stone, gasping and shivering as the demon organ croaked on, and the howling and drumming and tinkling of the mad procession grew fainter and fainter. Vaguely, he was conscious of the chanted horrors and shocking croakings afar off. Now and then, a wail or whine of ceremonial devotion would float to him through the black arcade, whilst eventually there rose a dreadful Greek incantation whose text he had read above the pulpit of that dance hall church.
O friend and companion of night, thou who rejoiced in the baying of dogs.
Here a hideous howl burst forth.
I spit blood.
Here, nameless sounds vied with morbid shriekings.
Who wanders in the midst of shades amongst the tombs?
Here, a whistling sigh occurred.
Who longs for blood and bringeth terror to mortals?
Short, sharp cries from myriad throats,
Gorgo,
repeated as a response,
Mormon,
repeated with ecstasy.
thousand-faced moon,
Sighs and flute notes.
look favourably on our sacrifices.
As the chant closed, a general shout went up, and hissing sounds nearly drowned the croakings of the cracked bass organ. Then a gasp as from many throats, and a babble of barked and bleated words.
Lilith, great Lilith, behold the bridegroom.
More cries and clamour of rioting, and the sharp clicking footfalls of a running figure. The footfalls approached, and Malone raised himself to his elbow to look. The luminosity of the crypt, lately diminished, had now slightly increased, and in that devil light there appeared the fleeing form of that which should not flee, nor feel, nor breathe. The glassy-eyed, gangrenous corpse of the corpulent old man, now needing no support, but animated by some infernal sorcery of the rite just closed. After it raced the naked, tittering, phosphorescent thing that belonged on the carven pedestal, and still further behind panted the dark men and the dread crew of sentient loathsomeness. The corpse was gaining on his pursuers and seemed bent on a definite object, straining with every rotting muscle towards the carved golden pedestal whose necromantic importance was evidently so great. Another moment and it had reached its goal, while the trailing throng laboured on with more frantic speed. But they were too late, for in one final spurt of strength, which ripped tendon from tendon and sent its noisome bulk floundering onto the floor in a state of jellyish disillusion, the staring corpse, which had been Robert Suydam, achieved its object and its triumph. The push had been tremendous, but the force had held out, and the pusher collapsed into a muddy blot of corruption. The pedestal he had pushed tottered, tipped, and finally careened from its onyx base into the thick waters below, sending up a parting gleam of carven gold as it sank heavily into undreamable gulfs of lower Tartarus. In that instant too, the whole scene of horror faded into nothingness before Malone's eyes as he fainted amidst the thunderous crack which seemed to blot out all the evil universe. Malone's dream experienced in full before he knew of Suydam's death and transfer at sea was curiously supplemented by some oddities of the case, though that is no reason why anyone should believe it. The three houses in Parker Place, doubtless long rotten with decay in its most insidious form, collapsed without visible cause, while half the raiders and most of the prisoners were inside, and both of the greater number were instantly killed. Only in the basements and cellars was there much saving of life, and Malone was lucky to have been deep below the house of Robert Suydam. For he really was there, as no one is disposed to deny. They found him unconscious by the edge of the night black pool, with a grotesquely horrible jumble of decay and bone, identifiable through dental work as the body of Suydam a few feet away. The case was plain, for it was hither that the smugglers' underground canal led, and the men who took Suydam from the ship had brought him home. They themselves were never found or identified, and the ship's doctor is not yet satisfied with the certitudes of the police. Suydam was evidently a leader in extensive man-smuggling operations, for the canal to his house was but one of several subterranean channels and tunnels in the neighbourhood. There was a tunnel from his house to a crypt beneath the Dancehall Church, a crypt accessible from the church only through a narrow secret passage in the north wall, and whose chambers some singular and terrible things were discovered. The croaking organ was there, as well as a vast arched chapel with wooden benches and a strangely figured altar. The walls were lined with small cells, in 17 of which, hideous to relate, solitary prisoners in a state of complete idiocy were found chained, including 4 mothers with infants of disturbingly strange appearance. These infants died soon after exposure to the light, a circumstance which the doctors thought rather merciful. Nobody but Malone, among those who inspected them, remembered the sombre question of old Del Rio.
And sint unquam daemons, incubi et succubae, et an ex tali congressu proles nasi quiat.
Before the canals were filled up, they were thoroughly dredged and yielded forth a sensational array of sword and split bones of all sizes. The kidnapping epidemic very clearly had been traced home, though only 2 of the surviving prisoners could by any legal thread be connected with it. These men are now in prison since they failed of conviction as accessories in the actual murders. The carved golden pedestal or throne, so often mentioned by Malone as of primary occult importance, was never brought to light, though at one place under the Suydam house, the canal was observed to sink into a well too deep for dredging. It was choked up at the mouth and cemented over when the cellars of the new houses were made. But Malone often speculates on what lied beneath. The police, satisfied that they had shattered a dangerous gang of maniacs and alien smugglers, turned over to the federal authorities the unconvicted Kurds who, before their deportation, were conclusively found to belong to the Yazidi clan of devil worshippers. The tramp ship and his crew remain an elusive mystery. Those cynical detectives are once more ready to combat its smuggling and rum-running ventures. Malone thinks these detectives show a sad, limited perspective in their lack of wonder at the myriad unexplainable details and the suggestive obscurity of the whole case. Though he is just as critical of the newspapers, which saw only a morbid sensation and gloated over a minor sadist cult when they might have proclaimed a horror from the universe's very heart. But he is content to remain silent in Chapachet, calming his nervous system and praying that time may gradually transfer his terrible experience from the realm of present reality to that of picturesque and semi-mythical remoteness. Robert Suydam sleeps beside his bride in Greenwood Cemetery. No funeral was held over the strangely released bones, and relatives are grateful for the swift oblivion which overtook the case as a whole. The scholar's connection with the Red Hook horrors, indeed, was never emblazoned by legal proof, since his death forestalled the inquiry he would otherwise have faced. His own end is not much mentioned, and the Suydams hope that posterity may recall him only as a gentle recluse who dabbled in harmless magic and folklore. As for Red Hook, it is always the same. Suydam came and Suydam went. A terror gathered and faded, but the evil spirit of darkness and squalor brewed on amongst the foreigners in the old brick houses, and prowling bands still parade on unknown errands past windows where light and twisted faces unaccountably appear and disappear. Age-old horror is a hydra with 1,000 heads, and the cults of darkness are rooted in blasphemies deeper than the well of Democritus. The soul of the beast is omnipresent and triumphant, and Red Hook's legions of blear-eyed, pockmarked youths still chant and curse and howl as they file from abyss to abyss. None knows whence or whither, pushed on by blind laws of biology, which they may never understand. As of old, more people enter Red Hook than leave it by the landward side, and there are already rumours of new canals running underground to certain centres of traffic in liquor and less mentionable things. The dance hall church is now mostly a dance hall, and queer faces have appeared at night at the windows. Lately, a policeman expressed the belief that the filled-up crypt has been dug out again, and for no simply explainable purpose. Who are we to combat poisons older than history and mankind? Apes danced in Asia before those horrors, and the cancer lurks secure and spreading where furtiveness hides in rows of decaying brick. Malone does not shudder without cause, for only the other day an officer overheard a swarthy hag teaching a small child some whispering patois in the shadow of an areaway. He listened and thought it very strange when he heard her repeat over and over again,
O friend and companion of night, thou who rejoiced in the baying of dogs and spilt blood, who wanderest in the midst of shades amongst the tombs, who longest for blood and bringest terror to mortals. Gorgo, Mormo, thousand-faced moon, look favourably upon our sacrifices.
So ends the horror at Red Hook. Next up, we have the Curse of Yik, link above. Before the start of The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, as a Halloween special, we currently release at least 3 episodes a week. More on weeks when we release a complete version. So check the channel page for more stories. Another link above. If you enjoyed the tale, it helps us a lot if you let others know. So please click the like button. Subscribing will let you travel with us on future adventures, with the bell notifying you as we set off. If you want to join our band of intrepid explorers of the unknown, come visit us on Patreon. There we have a Discord server where you can share in the discussion about the stories told with both myself and the other members, and even join the book club. There will be behind the scenes content, early access content, and options to guide which stories are chosen as the membership grows. There are even tiers to get your own stories produced, and a free tier if you just want notifications and updates. YouTube memberships will follow when I have enough subscribers. If you subscribe, it will help. But please only join if you can afford to. Let me know in the comments if there are any specific stories you would like to see portrayed in this format. I'm even open to suggestions on how I can improve the content. I try and reply to every comment, so your input will not be ignored. See the description for details of the Patreon, our other social media pages, and for a link to Canje Studios to find out about Arkham Horror board games. Click on the end screen to subscribe, or to go to the Thedunwichhorror or the Call of Cthulhu. Until next time, farewell. But remember, we live on a placid island of ignorance, in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far.